Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Bitcoin Morning Brief. I'm Leah Wald, and I'm here with Tone Vase, of course.
Hey
I'm really
guys,
excited about this one. And switching to Tone. Tone, you want to say hey?
I just did. All right, we're all good to go. Lead us into the stories, Leah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So our first story is about Israel. I'm going to go straight to screen share. Let's just say for all the Israelis out there, Shalom, Muhammad Zav. I'm excited about this one. And here we go. All right. So we have Israeli Supreme Court prohibits banks from restricting crypto activity in landmark decision. So moving down, and then I will go much slower. I found this very interesting. The Supreme Court's decision that has been described as precedent setting means that banks in general cannot limit accounts associated with the crypto industry. So I'll start off, switch it over to Tone and say, Tone, what do I think? What do you think? To start off with, I find it very interesting that, a lower court is is actually, moving this up.
Yeah, so I'm finding a couple of things interesting there. I didn't actually expect this to come from Israel, right? Because I haven't been to Israel, like some people, but oh, Leah, you wanna keep focus on the article? I haven't been to Israel, but like my perception of Israel is that they do have they run a tight ship there, right? I mean, again, they're in the middle of hostile territory geographically, and they have to keep a pretty tight ship. So I'm actually surprised that the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of Bitcoin, and again, and not have this tunnel vision that every single Bitcoin transaction is a form of money laundering and terrorist financing. So I'm a little bit surprised. Now, having said that, that is the correct decision, right? Because the bank can still do its job of money laundering, which I believe, should not even be a crime. But the bank can still do its job because the other end of the transaction is a cash transaction that they're supposed to keep an eye on. Once it's in Bitcoin, it's in Bitcoin. Like, it's not the bank's problem at that point, right? So the bank is taking on, the government has deputized these banks because the government can't police financial transactions. So because they can't police them, they have thrown that onto banks. Now, banks are now getting lazy in doing their investigation on what's an actually illegal transaction and what isn't. So they're saying, hey, we don't want to do all this work. Let's just make all of these Bitcoin transactions. Let's not deal with them at all. So I'm happy for this decision, and it's going to be good. Let's see how long it sticks around, because the banks and the other parts of the government are going to fight it, right? Like the Supreme Court and the I guess the investigative arms of the government, like the FBI and stuff like that, or Israeli version of it, they're not going to be happy with this Supreme Court decision. So they're going to fight back against the Supreme Court, as my expectation.
Yeah. So next story, which is Gates. Bill Gates. I do not think Bitcoin's anonymity is a good thing. So moving down, Gates stated that the use of cryptocurrencies for anonymous payments is not a good thing due to difficulties it creates for law enforcement when going after criminals. Tom, do you agree with this?
Well, I do. I agree with the statement. I agree that I disagree with Gates that that's a bad thing, right? So he said a couple of other things. By the way, shout out to Kyle Torpy, man, writing at Forbes. Excellent. Good job, man. Congrats. So I agree with his, like, he seems to understand what Bitcoin is, but he doesn't understand, like, he seems to focus on the bad versus the good. And the good that comes from this is grossly outweighs the bad. But Bill Gates is also given us a computer, Windows and computer operating system that spies on you. So like Bill Gates isn't exactly on the right side of privacy and anonymity here, right? Like, if he really wanted to fight for the common man, he would have built his Windows operating system without any backdoors. So me hearing Bill Gates's view on privacy and security isn't exactly a role model here. Okay. Now Gates also goes on. If you want to scroll down a little bit more, Leah. Actually, I need to click on my screen. Right. So he also mentions about the darknet markets and about the drug markets, and he mentions it in terms of, well, people died by using, was it fentanyl or some other drug? I mean, talk about not knowing my expertise here, but he talked about how people are using it to buy these drugs with Bitcoin, and they're putting themselves in danger. Now, what he doesn't realize is it's a lot safer for people to buy their drugs online for two reasons. First of all, if you're buying your drugs online, you can have a rating system like eBay or Amazon, not only on the product itself, but on the seller of that product. So you're buying a product that has been already approved by users of that product. In addition, you can buy it from the safety of your home and not have to go into the street, potentially putting yourself in more danger than from the product itself. So he's not taking those two things into account. As far as it's a lot safer if you're gonna use that thing anyway. Now, you can make the argument that you would not go buy it if it wasn't so convenient for you to buy it, and that's a debatable argument for sure. Now, the only real bad thing with Bitcoin is that I'm a little more worried about the global kidnapping situation because of Bitcoin, because now you no longer have to be present to collect a ransom. And Kyle Torpey pointed that out nicely. And in addition, Kyle Torpey in that article pointed out that I guess what do you call them? The encryption software, like the Crypto Locker and all the other ransomware that is now is easier to do with Bitcoin, because once again, you don't have to show up to get your ransom. Though that started back in the 80s, and you had to send cash or money order to a PO box in Panama back then. So not much has really changed, just made it a little bit easier. So on those points, I agree. But hey, Bill Gates, why don't you build a better operating system so that it's not very easy to crypto locker, okay, and remove all those back doors? So I'm not too interested in Bill Gates's opinion on Bitcoin, but he does seem to understand that Bitcoin is going to dominate the gray markets, and he made that clear in his AMA. So if Bitcoin is going to dominate the gray markets, that means it's an amazing investment, because Bitcoin is still used very little in those gray markets, and it's going to dominate the landscape, especially once cash has been eliminated. Your thoughts?
Yeah, what comes to me is the quote that he said before. I agree with you. Gates stated, I'll pull it up, that the use of cryptocurrencies for anonymous payments is not a good thing due to the difficulties it creates for law enforcement when going after criminals. Actually, I'll turn that back to you. I've heard your thoughts, but do you think that it does create difficulties given the current environment of how law enforcement is trying to go after them with a lot of different things, from Bitfury to here in DC, there's a lot of agencies that are talking about and putting a lot of money behind trying to really regulate this from a law perspective, obviously. So, and also just saying, recent studies have also found a decline in criminal activities, Bitcoin use. So it seems like we have a bit of a paradox. Todd?
Well, sure. Well, law enforcement job is supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be a difficult job. Now, I'm sorry that you're not getting the brightest of the brightest in your job, that it's hard for you to do your job because they don't want to do it, right? I mean, if you can make it to a detective and if you can make it up the ranks, then yeah, usually that person is pretty smart. But but most people don't go into that job if they can do something better with their brain power. It's not exactly the job most people want. Law enforcement job is supposed to be difficult, okay? When law enforcement job is easy, then we all get into a lot of trouble because they overreach, and the people kind of, just look throughout history. Once law enforcement's job becomes easy, it's basically corruption everywhere, and they think they're gods and they can do whatever they want in the street. So law enforcement, and the other thing is they have way too many laws. Like laws need to be lowered, right? Like as far as Bitcoin is concerned, you need to focus on kidnappings. You need to focus on, crypto locker, the technology sector needs to focus on that, not necessarily the law enforcement sector. But they just need to focus on, potential murder for hires and and kidnappings. That's it. Get out of policing, drug purchases. Get out of policing prostitution. Get out of policing gambling. They need to get out of that. They need to the government needs to lower taxes to the minimum possible and make it incredibly easy to comply with the tax law so that you don't have, the tax avoidance issues. Okay. These are all fixable things. So that's kind of my view on it. Law enforcement is supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to be easy. Everything ends badly when it's easy. And as far as the reduction in crime, obviously, Bitcoin, as Bitcoin grows, the percentage of criminal activity using Bitcoin is going to be smaller relation to all of Bitcoin usage. I take this all the way back to cars. I guarantee you the first people to buy a car were bank robbers because they can get away from the cops faster because the cops were on a horse. And eventually everybody has a car. Same thing with instant messaging, right? Like back in the day when instant messaging first came out, everyone is like, oh my God, don't talk to that people. You're going to get into a car and get kidnapped. And now we're using the internet specifically for the purpose of getting into strangers' cars to take us around. And so that's what's going to happen. The bigger thing is that the mainstream media never points out is that globally crime has been going down forever and always. Like in the U.S., crime and violent crime has consistently gone down in the last 100 years. Like the world is becoming safer and safer and safer every year, contrary to what the mainstream media has you believe.
Yeah. Just to end this one, I did find that I'll pull up one more quote at the very end. It's highlighted. If someone is going to take the view that Bitcoin will and should be shut down, then they need to explain how such a crackdown would take place. Self-explanatory. I think that, obviously they need to start setting some, very strong rules and regulations, exactly what we're talking about, but they're not explaining how. They're just explaining, obviously what their worries are about everything, but I'm not seeing what their plan or strategy
right.
is.
So some things are just unenforceable, and you have to explain how you're going to enforce a crackdown on Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving to another story. Right in alignment with tone, we have, moving this over for 1 sec, futures. Bitcoin is just the beginning, says one of the future market's biggest players. I know that Tone is going to get excited about this one. So moving down, to start off with, a quote that stuck out with me was Bob Fitzsimmons, managing director and head of Wedbush Futures, spent decades in the trading pits, focusing on traditional markets and options products like fixed income options. Now, as he oversees the Bitcoin futures arm of Wedbush Securities, he has an upbeat outlook, perhaps surprisingly so to some, for the digital currency market. Tone?
Sure. Actually, scroll down a little bit to the next section. Actually, the next line that says clients are asking, one is Litecoin and one is Ripple. So if his clients are asking that, then those clients are idiots. I'm sorry. They're gamblers, and they don't understand that, like, if you start adding futures for potential scam products like Ripple, you can seriously damage the entire financial system, right? Like, this is how bubbles grow out of hand. It's amazing to me how these people that are supporting projects like Ripple, projects like Dash, are the same people that are blaming Wall Street for the housing crisis and stuff like that, and like calling Wall Street criminals. When you start adding outright scam coins like Ripple to the general financial system for Wall Street to leverage futures on, they will pump this garbage to you. And then when this garbage goes to zero, you are going to run to the government and blame Wall Street because you wanted a scam to be traded as a leveraged instrument. Okay. So I wasn't even a huge fan of bringing Bitcoin into the realm of futures trading, but at least I consider Bitcoin legit. Litecoin is legit, but I think Litecoin is pretty much generally useless. So I'm not a big fan of having useless products be in the futures market in the regulatory space, but at least it's a legit asset, right? Uh, but that's it. That's where it ends, right? When you start talking about Ripple and Bcash and what else is there, Dash and God knows what else, even in the top 10, like why not put BitConnect there? Why not put OneCoin there? I mean, that's what Ripple is. So his clients that want these scam products on Wall Street, what might happen is, and this is starting to worry me, is that this is how if the ICO bubble and this altcoin bubble, if it doesn't end sooner than later within the confines of the crypto space, where only the crypto, 12-year-olds get, go permanently broke because they think they're millionaires right now. If that garbage gets gets like transferred into the actual financial system, and when that whole thing goes to zero, and don't like, I'm trying to warn you guys probably multiple years in advance. It's possible that this thing can go to unreasonable highs, because if you let like Wall Street play with this stuff in a in a regulated way, just like, hey, subprime mortgages, complete garbage from the start, but Wall Street was given the green light to play with it, and they played with it to $1 trillion real estate market until it all went to crap, and then you people blamed Wall Street. That's exactly what's going to happen here. You're the guys that want them to sell you the scam in a packaged way, and they will if you put something like Ripple in the futures market. So I'm not too thrilled with that at all. And if you go down to the very end of that article with the last paragraph, oh yeah, go ahead. Unless you want to comment on what I said, Leah.
Yeah, just one more comment on that. They're saying in this article that it would be rolled out, of course, on the CME CBOE. Again, which is saying linked to the physical delivery of digital assets rather than cash settled treatment. We already know how Bitcoin is working on those, but
you know what? Let me comment on that Let me comment on that as well.
Yeah.
Like I like the fact that the futures have huge margin requirements and they are cash settled and not physical delivery. Because if those futures go to physical delivery, then price discovery of Bitcoin might actually migrate from the exchanges. I'm gonna say the word like, I don't want to use the word decentralized exchanges, more like distributed exchanges, because at least there is no single exchange that controls the price of Bitcoin right now. I mean, I think they're all, there's like maybe one or two borderline competent exchanges. The rest are kind of, like giant catastrophes waiting to happen. But at least it's pretty distributed. If physical delivery moves into the CBOE space, then all price discovery of Bitcoin might actually move into the futures market the way we have gold and silver and oil. Like all price discovery can move into the futures market by Wall Street, which is not a good idea, to be honest with you. So I'm not, and this was the debate that I had with Ugly Old Goat. If you Google Tone Vase and Ugly Old Goat, you'll see us debating this issue on my podcast right here. Or like this happened this was in Bogota, Colombia. So this must have been the first week of December. So go back to that video. So him and I are debating this issue a little bit. So I don't really want to see physical delivery of Bitcoin on the CME or CBOE, because I don't want price discovery to be there. I like price discovery where it is, even though I give companies like Coinbase a lot of crap. So that's another thing. And all right, go ahead. I'll give it back to you.
Sure. Just saying, another thing that seemed quite silly to me in this article was that Fitzsimmons was saying that this reminds him of the beginning of futures for treasuries in the 1970s, which, yeah, treasuries obviously are the largest market in the world. What do you think?
I mean, I didn't really focus on that part. I mean, that's way before my time. But he also said that it also seems similar to the VIX futures, and I do agree with that. VIX futures I have experience with. I've traded VIX futures. Learned my lesson on the difference between an American option and a European option, and they're not geographical. They have to do with the way they expire. So I learned my lesson when I thought I had a monster profitable trade, but it was an American option, and hence it wasn't a very profitable trade. Sorry, it was a European option, not American option. So it wasn't a very profitable trade like I thought. I had calls on the VIX during the fat finger incident of 2015. Sorry, 2010. Fat finger incident, which wasn't really a fat finger, that was a scapegoat. But anyway, not going to get into that. But yeah.
Sorry, before moving on, I just think that the ending is very interesting. I love your thoughts on it.
Agree.
So I have it highlighted right now if you can see it. Just saying that, you know, there were 5,338 open contracts on the March CBOE exchange with total daily volume for 3,010 contracts. Each contract is worth 1 Bitcoin compared to 5 on the CME exchange, meaning that on February 27th, daily volume was just over 30 million.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's the thing, right? Like there's no volume there. That 30 million, that's not a lot. And that's notional, right? Remember, you don't have to put up anywhere near that. Like it's a leveraged instrument, right? So it's like 5 million of volume. That's nothing for a future, right? So the volume is actually pretty small. Also, keep in mind that this guy, he works for a company that trades this stuff, right? Like he's not affiliated with the CBOE. So he's just another analyst / trader. So this is not an article from the CBOE. This is an article from like a money manager, right? So his opinion doesn't really matter all that much, but it's an opinion from someone that's been around in the market for a long time, so he knows what he's doing. I would challenge him, however, on his knowledge of crypto, because if his clients are coming to him asking him, hey, when is Ripple going to be traded in the futures market? And he's not telling them that they're idiots for even asking, then I question his knowledge of the crypto space.
Yeah. Moving on to the next one. So the big story in the Twitter sphere right now is Bitcoin developer warns Lightning Network is flawed and likely vulnerable to DOS attacks. Do you agree with Peter?
Oh, God. So this is where I really miss Jimmy. I am going to briefly comment on this, and we are going to revisit this the next time Jimmy Song comes on, or I can get, a fill-in for Jimmy with another developer. So Peter Todd is an awesome troll. He really, really is. And he's a very neutral troll because he will go after, pretty much, he'll say his mind, which is great, which is why I really like Peter Todd. And I'm going to try, hopefully he'll be in Toronto in about a month and a half when I go to Toronto. So basically, you got to, that headline is a little misleading, okay? So Peter Todd famously said that, to me, it was awesome. I don't know how many people saw it. He tweeted out a long time ago that he often disagrees with the direction and the projects of Bitcoin Core, but at least their ideas are not batshit crazy like everybody else and these altcoins. Okay, so he's basically saying that C language is not the best thing to code Lightning in. And if you read his comments, he's actually saying that one of the problems that the Lightning devs are doing right now is they're trying to make Lightning too decentralized. So think about that, right? So Peter Todd, a guy that I respect a lot for his knowledge in crypto space, and I certainly consider him a core developer. Now he's saying, and he's all about privacy and security and decentralization. And he's saying that Lightning is a little too decentralized, potentially for its own good, damaging the security of your transactions because they're trying to make it too decentralized, which goes the complete opposite of the critics of Lightning that are saying that Lightning is too centralized. So just think about that. Think about that, right? So Peter is just warning that the way it's being coded could potentially cause some issues, and Peter is gonna help, mitigate those problems, right? Like Peter is writing that not to criticize them, but he's writing them to try to help them make it more secure, even if it comes at a slight cost of a little less decentralization. Now, I have no idea where I will stand on this. I need to talk to some developers on the opposite side of Peter. And Peter has been in lots of debates lately, especially around side chains, which is, again, many prominent developers are okay with side chains, and Peter thinks it's a huge damage to security. I don't know, Leah, if you want to put the screen share back on Peter's article, maybe show a couple of tweets that he sent out in the article. Because the focus is still on me a little bit there. So I don't know. I don't really know what to think of this yet. This is like the one time I really want Jimmy Song here to comment on some of this. And I don't know how far Jimmy Song has dug into the C code and security of Lightning. So, I mean, maybe I need to do one of these with the Lightning dev and we can discuss it. Hey, sounds like another good on the record. And speaking of on the record, I will be with Richard Hart in a couple of hours where we will do a show discussing his recent views on not being as Bitcoin maximalist anymore, and maybe talk about his ICO. You guys know how much I love ICOs. And let's see what Richard Hart has in store. So tune in about 2 hours for that.
Awesome. So prices are still stuck in trading range. Are we going to break out?
All right, let's go take a look. By the way, all these articles are in the description of the video, so go ahead and check them out. All right, let's get to the price. You know what? I'm not even going to do. I'll save those for the evening shows. Not going to bother. So nothing changed from last night. Here's the weekly chart. We still in this range on the weekly chart. So we have to wait. We have to wait for this week to end. The weekly chart is now giving you a bit of a bullish sign because we're still trading above the weekly doji, but the current week is not doing much. So we have to wait. We have to wait for this week to end. The daily chart is where all the action is. And like I warned you guys in last night's show, the resistance is massive. And if you were to take on a trade, a bullish trade based on the time indicator with a green 2 trading above a green 1, this trade needed to be unreasonably small because you had mounting resistance in the form of 200-day moving average and the descending trend line. And you can see that the price got totally rejected last night by this resistance, which was the most likely outcome. So the more time goes by, the more these resistance points are going to slightly spread out. Like if we can close today above the 50-day moving average and then hang in the $10,500 range into the trend line again, we have a high chance of breaking the trend line. Like when these resistance points of 50-day moving average, trend line, 200 or 128-day, and the next Fibonacci line and the setup trend line, when these resistance levels spread themselves out, they become easier to break. There's no like double or triple whammies, though there will always be a double whammy at the setup trend line plus Fibonacci. But that's the last one, the last hurdle we need to break. So right now we're in a totally neutral stance. It is a reversal candle with about 8 hours to go, but I don't believe that 2 days make a trend. So even though this is looking like a gravestone doji, the fact that the gravestone doji is coming up on a third day of an uptrend is almost irrelevant, right? It really needs to be a gravestone doji after like a 7 to 10 day of an uptrend, like we saw from February 12th all the way, or even earlier, all the way into February 20th. Okay, so I would be very, very careful with the bullish trade, but there's also no bearish trade on the table. So the weekly and daily charts are totally neutral. This is actually the 12-hour chart, which I looked at last night, and you can see how the 12-hour chart approached our setup trend line the new setup trend line, because there was one up there as well. This is a newer setup trend line. And once again, we were not able to break it. Now, this setup trend line is no longer in effect because we have a lower one on 12-hour. And you can see how we couldn't break it. The count is still green, but it'll probably go to red soon enough. You are sitting at support of Fibonacci. So let's see if we can hold up on the 12-hour chart. Normally, I look at the 4-hour chart, and it's pulling back into support because now we have the 50-period moving average and the Fibonacci line as support. So let's see if we can hold it here and turn back up. But if we spend too much time in the vicinity of 10,500 on the 4-hour chart, there's a higher probability of a drop back down below 10,000. So we need to reverse here and fairly quickly. Can't spend too much time here looking at the 4-hour chart. The 1-hour chart is looking excellent because we are approaching a 9 to the downside with the next candle. So let's see if we can get that 9 and we can get a bit of a relief rally for at least a 1 to 4 hour reversal to the upside and potentially continue that uptrend. So I am completely neutral right now. I would not want to have any trades on Bitcoin, bullish or bearish in the current environment. Any thoughts? Leah, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I thought you were potentially asking for Corey on Q&A.
No, we're good. No Q&A on the morning shows, guys. We're gonna stick to the news and weather reports of price and when Jimmy's here, development. And I'll try and bring you a second show in the day, though this really will show how much I have of a no life. Though today I do have a life tonight, so there may or may not be a show tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess just last question, given that, I work with Tyler, if you have any time, I would love to see if you could bring up the Amazon chart and just see what you think about it.
I mean, I can do that right now. Let's take a look. Amazon is a stock I am intimately familiar with because of 15 years of trading that. Well, on and off. It's a stock I'm very familiar with, and I'm sure I have it. Now, as my viewers know, I hate looking at stock charts using TradingView. I'm still a big fan of stock charts, which is also what Tyler is a big fan of, mostly because of our history of using it in the past. And look, you attended my trading seminar, so what do you think? What does this look like to you?
I mean, personally, just working with, here, I guess I'll take myself off there. Hold on. Working with Tyler, I personally think it's potentially in a hyperwave.
Well, besides hyperwave, right? You also attended my trading seminar in DC. So what do you see up there on yesterday's candle?
Sorry, I had you on the thing again. I see a 9.
Exactly, right? So I'm in a pullback for Amazon right now, short term. Like I see a 9, right? So I'm looking for a 1 to 4 candle correction on Amazon and then reevaluate the trade. So as of right now, I am very short term bearish Amazon. If I switch it to the weekly chart, again, there was a weekly 9 on Amazon last week. So you were also warned there. So at the moment, I do see Amazon as a little bit overpriced. You see the previous 9 on a weekly chart, and it caused a full month of a bit of stagnation and a bit of a reversal. So yeah, right now I would not be in a rush to buy Amazon stock based on daily charts. Now the picture can of course change, but right now I am looking more for a pullback in Amazon than a rush to buy it at these prices.
If I did understand the seminar and I had a lot of fun, what about that beautiful 13 cell?
Well, I don't see one on Amazon. Let me see here. Yeah. Oh, over here.
Yeah, to the left.
Oh, yeah. Wall Street saw that coming.
The 4 hour.
Absolutely. I gotta check my emails through with the trading desk. I mean, they loved notifying of the 13s. Yeah, that would have been nice. Wall Street would have caught that, but you could also say, hey, there was a 13 here that was ignored, but hey, that kind of happens. And yeah, so the one thing I want to look at is if Tyler is calling for a hyperwave here. I have to zoom out the weekly chart on Amazon. I might have to zoom it out a lot. Jeez. Is that as far as it goes? Yeah, 1998. Yeah, I guess. So if I mean, he likes linear charts, right? So if you are gonna throw, like, I don't know what Tyler is gonna do when he talks about Amazon, but I mean, this would be, according to my understanding of his work, this would be one because it's staying below a flat line, and now it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because this whole thing could be a two, or we're in a three right now, right? So I would go green on the, or purple on the next one. And Tyler could correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm also using log charts, right? So maybe I should go to linear charts for a better look. Oh yeah, there we go. You see the difference, guys? People ask me, hey, what's the difference between linear and log? Well, the chart of Amazon looks a hell of a lot different in linear than it did in log. And now this is a lot more clear, at least to me. And now you have your hyperwave. This would be two. And I would love to see Tyler. Tyler's probably going to see this video if he's not watching it already. This would be two to me. This would be three going this way. And we don't know. Well, that last point is a little bit tricky. Might have to zoom in on that.
I think there's a 4 right after that 3. I think
potentially. Well, maybe, right? Like this is where it gets a little bit tricky because of this guy. So this is what's going to make it very difficult even for Tyler, because you can't close below the line on a weekly basis. But like taking those 2 weeks away, I mean, nothing is perfect, right? So this could be 3, which means right now we're in the middle of 4. And you can talk to Tyler about this point here in 2016. So to me, this is pretty much 3. I like using best fit lines. And right now, we are working on 4, going like straight up, right? And the question is, if we break 4 and we go back and reverse from 3, then we never really had 4, and we're still waiting for 4, right? So that's kind of his theories on this. And you've been studying hyperwaves for a while now, so what do you think?
I think you nailed it, honestly. I agree with you completely. I was looking at just the past 13 years this morning and saw 2, 3, and 4. So honestly, it's very exciting because when you hit, especially after 3, the probability of it being a hyperwave extraordinarily increases. And, as Tyler talked about on your interview, that, we also believe that Bitcoin is in a hyperwave. So, thanks for bringing up Amazon, because I just think it's cool to see when you have it in the, in the stock market, and then also in our crazy, Wild West world of crypto, specifically Bitcoin. I think it's just pretty cool.
Yeah, and again, like I really love the 9s, and you can kind of see them here, and how somewhat cool they were. They're not always going to call you a top, but when they show up, there's a high probability of a top, like happened here, and like happened here in November of 2015, and here in January of 2014, and even here. And here's a red 9, so this 9 sets you up for upside. So that's pretty cool. That's what I like to see. And this is the weekly chart. The daily is gonna. And here's another like 9 at the top, in October of 2011, followed by a 9 at the bottom in December that led you all the way into this upside. So again, that's something I really like.
Yeah, and thanks for drawing those linear lines. You can absolutely see just how it is hitting on at least the hyperwave theory that Tyler and I have been talking about on the channel.
Right. Like, again, I'm a little worried about this point here. So Tyler will need to maybe mention what happened in February of 2016. And like, I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with, like, I love, like, for example, if I take this line and I draw it unreasonably thick, looks perfect, like, and then now I can, like, lower it a little bit like this, and I can kind of fudge it into, being perfect because I drew a much thicker line than a thin line. But to me, I'm okay with this, but let's see what Tyler says.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving us information for the vlog later today. Now I definitely have something to talk about even more. So awesome. Right. I think we're good. Unless you have any final statements, Don.
No, that's it. I gotta find a sign off like Jimmy. Someone said, "Hey, I should say, good luck trading out there. It's rough waters."
All right,
we'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Definitely have to get a little creative, especially with all the cool swag that you have, Tone. You got to have a cool closing too.
Yeah, you're just being nice. That's totally debatable. But all right, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Check out my On the Record later today with Richard Hart, and I'm sure Leah and Tyler will be doing another episode of Hyperwave later today.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, looking forward to that interview later today, Tone. And everyone, have a great day.